Hi, today I'm going to be showing you how to put together an introductory paragraph. And we're going to do this for the play A Midsummer's Night Dream by William Shakespeare. Now, you need to pick a topic for your essay. So I'm going to model this off of the essay topic of whether or not Shakespeare is using strong female characters in the play. So when you start your body paragraph, you want to begin it with a broad general statement. So I just have some notes here on the board, and I'm going to just show you the legend so that you understand my code system here. So we have in pink, the general statement, in blue, the outline for the body paragraphs, and in green, the thesis statement. So we're going to begin with the general statement. So let me just flip my camera around here because I'm wondering if we have, okay. So we're going to start with the topic sentence, or the topic sentence. So this should be a general statement. And really a broad general statement is what you want for this first sentence. And you're noticing that we're not mentioning the play anywhere here in this first sentence, but what we are doing is introducing the theme of the essay. So the essay is really going to hover around this idea that love is irrational. Now, this is not the same thing as a thesis. A thesis is far more specific. So the objective here of that paragraph is to go from general to specific. So we're going to start with that general statement, love is irrational. Then we're going to add in some specific examples. And because my topic is to do with women and how they're characterized, I'm going to have one paragraph about Hippolyta, one paragraph about Helena, and one paragraph about Hermia. So I've just made a little note in my brainstorming web. So this means body paragraph 1, that's body paragraph 2, that's body paragraph 3. And then I've also put a little note here in my planning, B, C, A. So what I'm doing here is just indicating the pattern of development that I'm going to be using. So you want to select a pattern of development that is logical for the type of essay that you are writing. So if you're writing a history essay, you might pick a pattern of development that is chronological. So your first body paragraph would be about the earliest historical event, and your last body paragraph would be the most recent historical event. This is an English essay, and I'm trying to be persuasive and convincing. So I'm going to use a pattern of development of order of importance. So you want to start with your second best idea and end with your best idea. So my second best idea is that Hippolyta is a hypocrite. So Hippolyta is queen of the Amazons. If we think about the mythology around the Amazons, these are really strong, fierce, independent women. And at the beginning of much of the play, Midsummer's Night Dream, the Amazons have just been conquered, and Hippolyta has been taken as Theseus's wife. So here she is, like typically in mythology, a symbol of strength and dominance of women. And here we begin the play with her, a conquered woman who is going to be marrying the person who just conquered her people. So when Hermia runs to Theseus at the beginning of the play and makes her or professes her love for Lysander and explains why she should not be marrying Demetrius, who her father wants her to marry. Hippolyta, who is expected to be a defender of women and the rights of women, is really a bystander to Hermia's oppression, because Theseus essentially decides that Hermia must do whatever her father says or else suffer the consequences, which in Athenian law would be to be put to death, if she disobeys her dad. Now, my next body paragraph is going to be about Helena. And I'm going to be talking about how Helena is very desperate. And really, that's going to center around this idea that she's chasing the man who doesn't love her anymore. So she's chasing after Demetrius, who did love her, but has changed his mind. And that will connect back to the theme of love is irrational. And then my third paragraph is going to look at Hermia, whose behavior might be described as reckless. She's really risking her life here by insisting she must marry Lysander, even when Lysander doesn't love her anymore after Puck puts some of that potion on his eyes. So she's the rebel here, rebelling against her father, which to the men, to Theseus and to Aegeus, her father, that is an irrational behavior. So when I go to write my body paragraph, my first sentence will be this one here, love is irrational. And then I would have 3 sentences that would essentially sum up the position I'm going to take on each of these characters in their respective body paragraphs. So I'd have 1 sentence about how Hippolyta is a hypocrite, and 1 sentence about how Helena is desperate, and 1 sentence about how Hermia is reckless. And in these sentences, I want to still demonstrate this idea of love being irrational. So with Hippolyta, she's gone from being a dominant woman to a submissive woman as she now must marry Theseus. And so she's being the dutiful wife and standing by his side and not interjecting and demanding that Theseus let Hermia marry Lysander, the one that she loves. Instead, she's a bystander to that oppression. She's a bystander to that unfairness and doesn't stand up for her when essentially Theseus gives her the ultimatum of marry Demetrius or be put to death. All she really does is kind of reinforce the 4 days. So Theseus gives them 4 days to kind of sort out their little love drama, and they'll all be married together the same day that he and Hippolyta will be married, which is 4 days from that moment. Now, with Helena, I want to communicate her desperation to be loved, and that she's really uncertain of her relationships and doesn't even have a stable friendship with Hermia, because she begins to really doubt anybody who shows any kind of caring or affection to her, especially after Puck puts the potion on the eyes of Demetrius and Lysander, and they both fall in love with her. So she goes from being the person who's chasing after someone who doesn't love to running away from those who love her, and seeing those emotions as being really irrational. In the case of Demetrius, it's irrational because he loved Helena up until a day ago and then had switched his mind and became so madly in love with Hermia that Hermia's father was willing to have Hermia killed if she didn't marry him. And then with my sentence about Hermia, I really want to communicate that she behaves in a reckless way. Now, she's trying to be very reasonable. She loves Lysander. Why would I marry Demetrius? I don't love him. But in standing up for herself in that way, she also puts herself in danger, because this is a pretty male-controlled world. So I want to just sum up those ideas. So there'll be 1 sentence each. Hippolyta's sentence will focus on hypocrisy. Helena's sentence will focus on desperation, and Hermia's sentence will focus on recklessness. And then I'll conclude my paragraph with the thesis. So in my thesis, I'm going to mention Shakespeare. So that's where the author is going to come in. And I'm going to have the name of the play in the thesis statement. So whereas in my intro, my general statement, I'm not going to mention that, I must have them in my thesis statement. So in William Shakespeare's A Midsummer's Night Dream, strong female characters are introduced only to be undone and overruled by dominant men who either ignore or overlook the women's efforts to assert reason or rationality in matters of the heart. So your thesis should be comprehensive enough to cover the 3 body paragraph topics. So I've mentioned strong female characters, so that alludes to my body paragraph topics. And it should also remind us of the theme, which is expressed in the general statement. It's far more specific than the general statement. So we are moving from general to specific. So I'm just going to flip my angle here. So we're starting broad and we're narrowing down till we get to the point, which is our thesis right here. Okay. Now it's probably easier to write just an outline for your intro paragraph, then do your body paragraphs and your conclusion, and come back and write your intro at the end. It seems kind of odd that you would do this last. You want to have your theme picked out. You want to have a thesis picked out, and a general idea of what you want to talk about in the body. But when it comes to putting it all together so it flows really nicely and connects all the pieces of your essay together, it's better to write it at the end. So just do an outline when you begin writing your essay, and when you're done, the other parts, the body paragraphs and the conclusion, then come back and fine tune this. So if that were me, if I were coming back and fine tuning this after I wrote the rest of my essay, I realized that I probably need a sentence between this one, my general sentence, and my first sentence about my first body paragraph, just to create more of a connection. I need a vehicle to sort of drive this theme into the example of A Midsummer's Night Dream. So in my second sentence, I would probably go back and I would insert another sentence in here that would tie these ideas together a little bit. All right, so I've added in another sentence just to create a better connection between my general statement and the summary of my body paragraphs and my thesis. So we want to think of each of these sentences as setting up and leading to the thesis at the end. So I just did a skeleton outline before, and now that I've spent some time writing my body paragraphs and my conclusion, I can think a little bit more clearly about the introduction, and I can recognize that I need a bit more explanation in that intro so that my reader fully understands my thesis statement. And so that sentence will go here between the general statement and the summary of body paragraph topics. So what I've added in is in the play, and I'm just using a short form here. Of course, in your essay, you will use the full name of the play. So in the play, A Midsummer's Night Dream by William Shakespeare, the characters behave in unusual ways when it comes to love and relationships. And then that sets up my sentences about Hippolyta acting hypocritical, and Helena acting desperate, and Hermia acting reckless a little bit better. And it gives sense to this last sentence, my thesis, about how my strong female characters are introduced only to be undone and overruled by dominant men who either ignore or overlook their efforts to assert reason over irrationality and matters of the heart. Okay? So you'll notice that I'm using present tense. That's important. You want to use present tense in an essay that is about a piece of literature or a play. So even though Shakespeare wrote Midsummer's Night Dream 400 years ago, the play never dies. It lives on. It's continuing to be performed, so we will use present tense. I've underlined the title of the play, but when you're typing it, you will use italics, and that's just a code system to help communicate that that's the title.